Today our topic is how to use Stoicism to overcome fear. Fear is something everyone feels. It is natural. Fear can protect us from danger, but it can also stop us from living fully. Stoicism is an ancient philosophy that teaches us how to deal with fear and other emotions. It helps us focus on what we can control and let go of what we cannot. This way, we can live a calmer and more meaningful life. Stoicism is not about ignoring fear. It is about understanding it and not letting it control us. Let's explore how we can use Stoic principles to overcome fear. First, let's understand what fear is. Fear is an emotion that comes from the unknown or from things we think might harm us. It could be fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of losing something, or even fear of death. Fear is not always bad. It can warn us of real dangers. But when fear becomes too strong, it can stop us from taking action or trying new things. This is where Stoicism can help. Stoicism teaches us to face fear with courage and reason. One of the main ideas in Stoicism is to focus on what we can control and accept what we cannot. This is very important when dealing with fear. Often, we are afraid of things that are outside our control. For example, we might fear what other people think of us, or fear that something bad will happen in the future. These things are not in our control. We cannot control other people's thoughts, and we cannot predict the future. The Stoics say that worrying about these things is a waste of time and energy. Instead, we should focus on what we can control, like our own actions, thoughts, and attitudes. For example, imagine you are afraid of speaking in public. This is a common fear. You cannot control how the audience will react or whether they will like your speech. But you can control how well you prepare. You can practice your speech, learn about the topic, and focus on delivering it clearly. By focusing on what you can control, you reduce your fear. You might still feel nervous, but you will not be paralyzed by fear. Another Stoic principle is to accept that fear is a part of life. The Stoics believe that we should not try to avoid fear completely. Instead, we should accept it as a natural emotion. Fear is not the problem. The problem is how we react to fear. If we let fear control us, it can stop us from living fully. But if we accept fear and face it with courage, we can grow stronger. The Stoics also teach us to prepare for the worst-case scenario. This might sound negative, but it is actually a very practical way to deal with fear. By imagining the worst that could happen, we realize that it is often not as bad as we think. For example, if you are afraid of losing your job, imagine what you would do if it happened. You might realize that you could find another job, or learn new skills, or even start a new career. By preparing for the worst, you reduce the power of fear. You realize that you can handle whatever life throws at you. Another important Stoic idea is to practice gratitude. When we are afraid, we often focus on what we might lose or what could go wrong. But if we take a moment to think about what we already have, we can feel more positive and less fearful. For example, if you are afraid of losing a loved one, take a moment to appreciate the time you have with them now. This does not mean you should ignore your fear, but it helps you balance your emotions. Stoicism also teaches us to live in the present moment. Fear often comes from worrying about the future or regretting the past. But the present moment is all we have. By focusing on the present, we can reduce fear and live more fully. For example, if you are afraid of failing at a task, focus on doing your best right now. Do not think about what might happen in the future. Just focus on the task in front of you. One of the most famous Stoic philosophers is Epictetus. He was born a slave, but became a great teacher. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is a very powerful idea. It means that we cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond. If we respond to fear with courage and reason, we can overcome it. Another Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, was a Roman emperor. He wrote a book called Meditations, which is full of wisdom about how to deal with fear and other challenges. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This means that we cannot control what happens in the world, but we can control our thoughts and attitudes. If we focus on our inner strength, we can overcome fear. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This means that our fears are often worse than the actual events. For example, you might be afraid of giving a speech, but when you actually do it, it is not as bad as you imagine. By understanding this, we can reduce our fear. Stoicism also teaches us to practice self-discipline. This means controlling our desires and emotions. When we feel fear, we should not let it take over. Instead, we should think clearly and act wisely. For example, if you are afraid of making a mistake, do not let that fear stop you from trying. Instead, think about what you can learn from the experience. Finally, Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is truly important in life. Often, we are afraid of things that do not really matter in the long run. For example, we might fear losing money or status. But the Stoics say that these things are not as important as our character and how we treat others. By focusing on what is truly important, we can reduce our fear and live a more meaningful life. In conclusion, Stoicism offers many practical tools for overcoming fear. By focusing on what we can control, accepting fear as a natural emotion, preparing for the worst, practicing gratitude, living in the present, and focusing on our inner strength, we can face fear with courage and reason. Fear will always be a part of life, but it does not have to control us. As the Stoics teach us, we have the power to choose how we respond to fear. By practicing these principles, we can live a calmer, more meaningful, and more courageous life.